Welcome to the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. Today, we shall tackle the first law, the law of the lid. According to this law, the leadership ability is the lid that determines a person's level of effectiveness. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential. The higher the leadership, the greater the effectiveness. To give you an example, if your leadership rate's an 8, then your effectiveness can never be greater than a 7. If your leadership is only a 4, then your effectiveness will be no higher than a 3. Your leadership ability, for better or for worse, always determines your effectiveness and the potential impact of your organization. It's true that the McDonald brothers were financially secure. Theirs was one of the most profitable restaurant enterprises in the country, and they felt that they had a hard time spending all the money they made. Their genius was in customer service and kitchen organization. That talent led to the creation of a new system of food and beverage service. In fact, their talent was so widely known in food service circles that people started writing them and visiting from all over the country to learn more about their methods. At one point, they received as many as 300 calls and letters every month. That led them to the idea of marketing the McDonald's concept. The idea of franchising restaurants wasn't new. It had been around for several decades. To the McDonald brothers, it looked like a way to make money without having to open another restaurant themselves. In 1952, they got started, but their effort was a dismal failure. The reason was simple. They lacked the leadership necessary to make it effective. Dick and Maurice were good restaurant owners. They understood how to run a business, make their systems efficient, cut costs, and increase profits. They were efficient managers. But they were not leaders. Their thinking patterns clamped a lid down on what they could do and become. At the height of their success, Dick and Maurice found themselves smack dab against the law of the lid. In 1954, the brothers hooked up with a man named Ray Kroc, who was a leader. Kroc had been running a small company he founded, which sold machines for making milkshakes. He knew about McDonald's. Their restaurant was one of his best customers. And as soon as he visited the store, he had a vision for its potential. In his mind, he could see the restaurant going nationwide in hundreds of markets. He soon struck a deal with Dick and Maurice, and in 1955, he formed McDonald System Incorporated, later called the McDonald's Corporation. Kroc immediately bought the rights to a franchise so that he could use it as a model and prototype to sell other franchises. Then he began to assemble a team and build an organization to make McDonald's a nationwide entity. He recruited and hired the sharpest people he could find, and as his team grew in size and ability, his people developed additional recruits with leadership skill. In the early years, Kroc sacrificed a lot. Though he was in his mid-50s, he worked long hours just as he had when he first got started in business 30 years earlier. He eliminated many frills at home, including his country club membership, which he later said added 10 strokes to his golf game. During his first 8 years with McDonald's, he took no salary. Not only that, but he personally borrowed money from the bank and against his life insurance to help cover the salaries of a few key leaders he wanted on the team. His sacrifice and his leadership paid off. In 1961, for the sum of $2.7 million, Kroc bought the exclusive rights to McDonald's from the brothers, and he proceeded to turn it into an American institution and global entity. The lid in the life and leadership of Ray Kroc was obviously much higher than that of his predecessors. In the years that Dick and Maurice McDonald had attempted to franchise their food service system, they managed to sell the concept to just 15 buyers. Only 10 of whom actually opened restaurants. And even in that small enterprise, their limited leadership and vision were hindrances. For example, when their first franchisee, Neil Fox of Phoenix, told the brothers that he wanted to call his restaurant McDonald's, Dick's response was, "What for? McDonald's means nothing in Phoenix." On the other hand, the leadership lid in Ray Kroc's life was sky high. Between 1955 and 1959, Kroc succeeded in opening 100 restaurants. For years after that, there were 500 McDonald's. Today the company has opened more than 21,000 restaurants in no fewer than 100 countries. Leadership ability, or more specifically the lack of leadership ability, was the lid on the McDonald brothers' effectiveness. Success is within the reach of just about everyone. But I also believe that personal success without leadership ability brings only limited effectiveness. A person's impact is only a fraction of what it could be with good leadership. The higher you want to climb, the more you need leadership. The greater the impact you want to make, the greater your influence needs to be. Whatever you will accomplish is restricted by your ability to lead others. Let me give you a picture of what I mean. Let's say that when it comes to success, you're an 8, on a scale from 1 to 10. That's pretty good. I think it would be safe to say that the McDonald brothers were in that range. But let's also say that your leadership ability is only a 1. Your level of effectiveness would look like this. To increase your level of effectiveness, you have a couple of choices. You could work very hard to increase your dedication to success and excellence, to work toward becoming a 10. It's possible that you could make it to that level, though the law of diminishing returns says that the effort it would take to increase those last 2 points might take more energy than it did to achieve the first 8. If you really killed yourself, you might increase your success by that 25%. But you have another option. Let's say that instead you work hard to increase your level of leadership. Over the course of time, you develop yourself as a leader, and eventually, your leadership ability becomes, say, a 6. Visually, the results would look like this. By raising your leadership ability, without increasing your success dedication at all, you can increase your original effectiveness by 500%. If you were to raise your leadership to 8, where it matched your success dedication, you would increase your effectiveness by 700%. Leadership has a multiplying effect. I've seen its impact over and over again in all kinds of businesses and nonprofit organizations. And that's why I've taught leadership for more than 20 years. To change the direction of the organization, change the leader. Leadership ability is always the lid on personal and organizational effectiveness. If the leadership is strong, the lid is high. But if it's not, then the organization is limited. That's why in times of trouble, organizations naturally look for new leadership. When the country is experiencing hard times, IT elects a new president. When a company is losing money, IT hires a new CEO. When a church is floundering, IT searches for a new senior pastor. When a sports team keeps losing, IT looks for a new head coach. The relationship between leadership and effectiveness is evident in sports. For example, if you look at professional sports organizations, the talent on the team is rarely the issue. Just about every team has highly talented players. The leadership provided by the coach, and several key players, makes the difference. To change the effectiveness of the team, lift up the leadership of the coach. That's the law of the lid. Wherever you look, you can find smart, talented, successful people who are able to go only so far because of the limitations of their leadership. For example, when Apple got started in the late 1970s, Steve Wozniak was the brains behind the Apple computer. His leadership lid was low, but that was not the case for his partner, Steve Jobs. His lid was so high that he built a world-class organization and gave it a 9-digit value. That's the impact of the law of the lid. A few years ago, I met Don Stevenson, the chairman of Global Hospitality Resources Incorporated, of San Diego, California, an international hospitality advisory and consulting firm. Over lunch, I asked him about his organization. Today he primarily does consulting, but back then his company took over the management of hotels and resorts that weren't doing well financially. They oversaw many excellent facilities such as La Costa in Southern California. Don said that whenever they came into an organization to take it over, they always started by doing two things. First, they trained all the staff to improve their level of service to the customers, and second, they fired the leader. When he told me that, I was at first surprised. "You always fire him?" I asked. "Every time?" "That's right. Every time," he said. "Don't you talk to the person first to check him out to see if he's a good leader?" I said. "No," he answered. "If he'd been a good leader, the organization wouldn't be in the mess it's in. It's the law of the lid. To reach the highest level of effectiveness, you have to raise the lid one way or another."